Welcome to my presentation of Justice and Ethical Duties of Public Administrators. Justice. Justice is a multifaceted concept that has been extensively examined across various disciplines, including philosophy, political science, sociology, and law. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. Aristotle, one of the great philosophers, talks about two forms of justice: distributive justice and corrective justice. Distributive justice concerns the equitable allocation of resources based on merit, whereas corrective justice addresses rectifying wrongs through proportional recompense. In A Theory of Justice, John Rawls proposes the concept of justice as fairness, encapsulating two principles. Moving on to sociological perspective, Max Weber models emphasizes the importance of procedural justice, and Pierre's theory of social capital addresses justice in terms of social equity. He argues that justice involves addressing the power imbalances and ensuring equal access to culture and social resources. The legal perspective. In the concept of law, Hart views justice as a central component of the legal system where laws must be applied consistently and impartially. Donald Workin argues for law as integrity, suggesting that the legal interpretation should be guided by the principles of justice and fairness and due process rather than the mere precedent or statute. Fairness. Fairness, like mentioned before, is so intertwined with justice. A professor I had who was a practicing attorney once said to me, "The law is not always just, but it is fair." Fairness is what justice really is. Potter Stewart, Supreme Court Justice, who served 1915 to 1985. Philosophical perspective of fairness. As mentioned previously, John Rawls introduced the concept of justice as fairness. Immanuel Kant articulates that fairness is rooted in the categorical imperative, which requires that individuals act accordingly. The economic perspective. In The Idea of Justice, Sen critiques traditional economics focus on utility and welfare maximization, arguing instead for a capabilities approach. John's perspective suggests that fairness is an economic distribution and should maximize overall happiness or utility while considering the risk and benefit distributed across society. Psychological perspective. John Stacy Adams' theory in organized psychology examines fairness regarding input-output ratios. Lawrence's development include progression towards a post-conventional level where individuals recognize the universal principles of justice and fairness that transcends specific laws or social agreements. Here are things that could be applied to foster a more equitable and accountable public administration. Establishing clear and transparent procedures. Promote fair distribution of resources. Ensure equality, support, enhance capabilities and well-being, maintain accountability and integrity, and foster inclusive participation. Justice demands integrity. It is to have a moral universe, not only know what is right or wrong, but to put things in perspective, weigh things. Justice is different from violence and retribution. It requires complex accounting. Bell Hooks. Public administrators should approach the issues of injustice and equity with comprehensive, inclusive, and a proactive strategy. This involves several key steps. Listing some of them here: having a holistic framework, inclusive decision making, and fostering a culture of equity. In academic and public administration literature, justice is often defined through a multifaceted lens that includes principles of fairness, equality, and impartiality, and respects for human rights. This comprehensive definition, drawn from philosophical, sociological, and legal perspective, by embodying these principles into their operating practices, public agencies can enhance their legitimacy by building public trust, effectively addressing systematic inequalities, and ensures for a good organization. In the Christian worldview, justice and fairness are deeply rooted in biblical principles. If you look, justice involves treating others with compassion and equity, reflecting on God's command to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Fairness in this context can mean ensuring that all people, especially the marginalized and disadvantaged, receive fair treatment and opportunities. These principles are called upholding the truth, integrity, restorative practices, and aiming to create a community where love, justice, and fairness prevail. Thank you so much for joining me on this presentation.